Hello there. Welcome. This is Authentic Me in my loft, winter, so I've got a hat on. And I today I'm going to introduce you to positive psychology. What can it do for you as an aid worker? And Barbara Fredrickson and her theories that I think can be useful. So we're going to start the slideshow. First of all, what is positive psychology? So Barbara Fredrickson is this author who has written this book. Your context, because we always start with you. What I understand is that you're educated, intelligent. You're working between East Jerusalem and Gaza. I don't know much about you, but I'm going to be asking a lot because everything would start with your context. For me as an aid worker, and I've worked for many, many decades in lots of war zones all around the world, it included all sorts of those often contrasting emotions, often diametrically opposite emotions, boredom, excitement, etc., etc. They may apply to you, but you will tell me that. What is positive psychology? Well, depends how deep you want to go. The Greeks are claimed by many people as a basis of their philosophy. Eastern philosophy is very much drawn upon Buddhist mindfulness and Taoism and Hinduism. And then we're going to look at four main figures at the bottom of that slide. So the agenda today, we're going to look at the positive psychology's roots, Maslow, Rogers and Seligman plus, that positive psychology is focusing on what is, not what's lacking, some of the benefits in your context, and then Barbara Fredrickson, and particularly love 2.0 and ask, is it for you? So Maslow, the grandfather of positive psychology, he was famous for the pyramid, which goes from the basic needs of food and breathing, etc., at the bottom to self-actualization, which is what you're aiming at. So he later in life said that that should be more like a spiral going up. He critiqued himself. He modified a lot. He got criticized for having suspect samples of elite people, but we're still talking about him, and self-actualization is still on vogue. Rogers, very important. He was very much about non-directive, client-centered psychotherapy, personal, humanistic, authentic. He worked a lot street level engagement with Northern Ireland, and he was seen as a person of warmth and care. He did work for the Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Children, and he believed and was engaged. Seligman is a father of positive psychology, and he said 1% of journal articles are on happiness and 99% are on sadness. So he went from something called learned helplessness and said we need to go to learned optimism, happiness from pleasure towards an optimal state. So positive psychology is not about the glass being half full. It doesn't sum up positive psychology or being eternally happy, but that life is not just about mental health problems. We're focusing such a lot on what is not there, and PP is about harnessing what is. So it's about the flourishing and the optimal functioning of people. In our sector of aid work, it's very much relevant to accountability, coordination, do no harm of Mary Anderson, and Chambers is participatory learning and action. So here's some examples of interventions that can be useful. There's a couple of definitions there of PPIs. And we usually start with a VIA character strength survey or some other kind of survey. 14 fundamentals was brought out, fairly standard stuff. A lot of this stuff is actually quite standard. Here's another one that I like. It's a bit ruder, but it's very down to earth. Gratitude interventions are very much known about positive and possible future self. I've done quite a bit of work with that in Honduras. But there are many, many, as you can see. Fredrickson, with a big smile. She's known for broaden and build. She's got 10 positive emotions that you can see there. The starred ones, the asterisked ones, are the ones that are more common. And she is about building resources over time and getting the optimism and flow from that. So she says, imagine a funnel. In evolutionary terms, at the bottom, we needed to concentrate for fight or flight to fend off the saber-toothed tiger. And in positive emotions, when we're at the top, we have a vista. We can look out, we can get perspectives, we can interact with people, and we can create our own optimal response to life. How has she broadened positive psychology? Well, she's a woman in a man's field. She's a collaborator. If you look at this, this is her other acknowledgements there. 11 lines of people that she has collaborated with. I don't know if you won't be able to read it, but it's 11 lines of people's names. So I think that says something about her. She's a dedicated scientist. She does big tests with big numbers of people at a positive emotions laboratory in California. She starts where people are, and when she's got something wrong, she auto-critiques. So the broaden and build theory was great, but she said to get flow, you need at least 2.9013 exactly positive emotions for every negative emotion, and then you can rise above. Now, this was debunked as voodoo science by someone called Friedman and others. She is authentic enough to say, look, I got that wrong. That doesn't hold. And that I'm more novice than expert when putting these ideas into action. So Seligman, the father, if you remember him, he said, hey, nobody said this ratio of 2.9013 was exact. His critics said, no, you said that exactly in a ratio in a classroom intervention, despite the fact that you can't measure emotions. I would say there's physics, there's mathematics, there's gravity. Every time I drop this pen, it's going to fall on the earth. It's going to fall. Gravity works every time. Social science isn't like that. It's about pursuing understanding and being authentic with it. So I believe Fredrickson has done that. In Love 2.0, she talks about love as our supreme emotion. She talks about generating micro moments of warmth and connection. She calls it positivity resonance. And she goes into all the biology, which is way above my hat, way above that. But she goes into the vagus nerve and how it affects our facial expressions and the muscles of the inner ear, and they test all this stuff. So she says that loving kindness meditation, and the more difficult thing of directing love to yourself in some cultures that are more individualistic, less so in Thailand, but it's a challenge to people to love themselves more than it is to love others. So she has meditations. May we feel safe, may we feel happy, may we feel healthy, may we live with ease. She kind of unwraps Homer Simpson and the, oh, I've got it wrong, I'm so stupid, I'm so dumb kind of thing, and says, look, there are better ways. She also goes into handheld counters, and she suggests that you could click like this with this kind of thing. Every time you have a positive emotion, click it. Every time you have a negative emotion, there's a digital one, you can press that one. So it's interesting stuff, and it's well written. It's kind of popular, and she has popularized the sector. In Compassion, she talks of meeting suffering with love. Now, that's really relevant to our sector. She suggests that in a place which is very much bitterly divided, as your context is at the moment, if we were to imagine hovering over that place, say Gaza, and the whole area that you're working in, you could develop the empathy to people you can't necessarily see, but you can feel how they are operating, how they are suffering, whether it's a small number of hostages that are suffering, or whether it's a large number of people who are being bombarded, you can reach out to all of them. And this is something that people, possibly on both sides of that debate, could help to generate something to get them and us out of this incredibly intractable and impossible kind of gulf and misery that's been going on for 70 odd years, 80 years. She talks about loving all, again through visualization, and she talks about ecstasis. So this is very relevant to aid work, as we know, where people are not creating ecstasis through religion, ecstasy. They are creating it perhaps from ecstasy, from drugs, from dance, music, arts, from sex, from all sorts of things which can be good in some contexts, bad in other contexts. She's very compassionate and understanding of that, which is created in a very intense situation like you are living through. Anyway, I conclude that positive psychology has a role in bringing us closer to a truth, an understanding. In the intensity of aid work, Broaden and Build can create for us a wider contextual understanding that we can, through love and kindness meditation, but also through music and other things, we can create a sustainable growth, a longer term growth than just the ecstasis. And that Fredrickson herself has continued to broaden and build the positive psychology movement, not as some kind of perfect person, but as a flawed human with a dedicated and self-aware style. So if you're interested, at some point, I'd like to have a chat with you about what resonated with you from this, what you mean by love, etc. Whether you want to explore positive emotions in aid work towards that ecstasis, recovery, flow, think it over. After 3 days, if you would welcome that, after 3 days, I'll send you a message and see where we are with it. Here's loads of references that you won't read. And this is a R&R situation where I am with a frisbee on a beach. It's always wonderful to get away from those tough situations occasionally, and then we long to get back to them. And that's all, folks.